Well, I think certainly one of the things that Americans need to do in confronting the Obama administration is to confront this issue of a contiguous Palestinian state. President Obama has said in his first week in office that he's committed to that. This is a failed plan. To pursue this means that Israel would have to be cut in half. If Gaza and the West Bank are put together and are contiguous, that means Israel is not contiguous. And this is the ultimate as far as the two-state solution is concerned, land for peace, and this is a factually, historically failed policy. Why? Because Israel really has no peace partners. The leaders of the Palestinians, and I put the plight of the Palestinians solely as the responsibility of the Palestinian leadership. The leadership has in all of their founding documents the commitment to the destruction, the elimination of Israel. You see a map today of a Palestinian state, and it's Israel. It's modern Israel as we know it. And as Christian Zionists, we're opposed to that, primarily because of what God has said in the Hebrew Scriptures concerning the covenants for a national homeland. And that's the basis of our support. Now, there are implications for that. I think, for example, one of the implications is since Israel has not had a peace partner, since the Palestinian jihadists and their leadership do not provide for that kind of peace partnership, that the best that we can expect, and going back to the Obama administration, I would hope that they would see containment as the solution to this. That is, containment of the Palestinian jihadists. We're not going to appease them. There's no way to appease them. There's no negotiation with them. Deterrence means nothing. They have a death wish on themselves. And so the only thing that we can really do, and I think the United States can urge this, is to contain these people, which means that they have to be defeated militarily, they have to be disarmed, and the infrastructure has to be dismantled. And at that point, they can be contained. Now, that's a tall order, but it's doable. Let's face it, for example, Gaza is 25 miles long and 7 miles wide.
Can you show us on the map?
I can. We're right down, this is Tel Aviv. We're down here at this corner. This is Gaza. It goes on a little further down here. But for a contiguous state, would have to be connected up here with the West Bank, which is the
board? What's that green line mean?
That green line is supposedly the 1967 borders. But to connect them, you have to cut Israel in two, and that's just not acceptable.
Show me where it would have to cut it.
Well, it'd have to come up here someplace. I mean, come up and connect with the green line someplace, because this is what they're expecting to give up. This is what constitutes the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, which is the heartland of Israel.
And where your hand is that the envisioned Palestinian state?
That would be the envisioned Palestinian state.
So what would this narrow strip be?
Which is about 9 miles wide. That would constitute Israel as we know it. That would reconstitute the modern state of Israel.
Are you a retired military man?
I am.
What was your retired rank?
A brigadier general.
In the Army?
In the Army.
And have you looked at it militarily?
That's totally indefensible. This is high ground here. This is a relief map, a contour map. And this is high ground. And so if the Palestinians are in charge of the high ground, they can lob mortars and Qassam rockets and artillery in. That's what happened in the north, in the Golan Heights, until Israel took over the Golan Heights and stopped that. And militarily, that's what has to be done.
Whose puppet would the Palestinian state be?
It would be a puppet state of Iran. Iran. I mean, the proxies of Iran are Hamas in the south mainly and Hezbollah in the north. So Iran becomes a threat. The middleman in all of that is Syria.
Where's Syria?
Syria is on further north here, above this. Lebanon is here, Syria is over here. So Israel is surrounded as they are. You know, Israel is the size of New Jersey. And we think of Israel as New Jersey, and we think of all of the Arab nations as the rest of the 48 or 50 states of the United States. I mean, that's approximate.
So what would happen to America's hegemony over the Middle East if Israel were to fall?
They wouldn't have it. That hegemony would be gone.
American hegemony over the Middle East.
That's exactly right. We may have a presence in Iraq, and President Obama has now said that would make an advisory group of some 50,000 people. And personally, I think that's the sane, rational thing to do because of the region, because of the problems that are there in the region, primarily from jihadists.
So if America loses its hegemony in that region, what does that mean for Russia? What would that mean for Russia and Russian oil?
Well, it would mean an increase in their control in that area, certainly. And but you know, there's a way to combat that if we discover new oil here, if we exploit the energy alternatives that we have in this country. President Obama has talked about wind and solar energy. He's not talked about oil very much, but I think that's going to be increasingly a problem that we have to face.
And so is support for Israel in an American interest?
Absolutely, absolutely. And from a Christian Zionist standpoint, we look at that as absolutely essential. It's a given because of God's promise in His covenants to provide a national homeland for the Jewish people. That's valid for today. And those covenants are eternal, they're everlasting. So that's the basis of our support. But there are implications of it. As I said, you know, the jihadists have to be disarmed, they have to be defeated. UNRWA has to be dissolved.
What is UNRWA?
UNRWA is the United Nations Relief Works Agency. And it's the, it's the United Nations organization that supports the refugee problem among the Palestinians. And its sole purpose is to perpetuate that problem in an effort to delegitimize the existence of Israel. So, I mean, they have no intention of absorbing these refugees anyplace, of helping them out to the point where they could become a part of a sovereign state someplace. So that has to be continued. The UN has another agency that handles some 150 refugee problems throughout the country, or throughout the world, into the millions, like 31 million refugees. The Palestinian refugee should be brought under that, rather than having an organization that is solely committed to their perpetuation. They're not going to do anything about it. It's not in their interest to do anything about it.
So what would you say that Americans ought to do in the face of Obama rushing to create a Palestinian state?
I think Zionists, Christian Zionists, need to raise up. I'm a member, for example, of the National Association of Evangelicals, and we number 85 million people, churches, denominations, individuals, groups. And I would say conservatively, half of those people are and that's very conservative, half of those people are pro-Israel. They don't want to see any more land for peace. That's a wasted effort. It's a failed effort. And that's a sizable segment of the voting population in this country. And I think that we could be around. I think there's an army awaiting to be led in support of Israel. And I think the RNC and I think others who take this same stance can be called upon to support Israel and to come against these policies that Obama is advocating at this point.
If Obama were to press to do things detrimental to Israel, what impact, what effect do you think that would have on the fate of America?
Well, as a Christian Zionist, I think it would have an extraordinarily negative effect. And I base that on what the Scripture says. The Scripture says, that with regard to Israel, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And you look at the nations historically who have come against Israel, they have been cursed.
concerned that Obama may be leading America down that?
I am concerned. I am concerned at that. And I think that this latest attempt, as we speak, next Tuesday, the Secretary of State Clinton is going to Gaza with $900 million in hand. And this is insane, because there is no way that money is not going to reach Hamas. And they have commandeered humanitarian efforts that come in there. They've commandeered money. The Palestinian leadership has got grossly wealthy over this at our expense. And we just keep feeding into this. And it's, like Einstein's definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over again, expecting a different result. And we have to have a new plan. It's essential that we have a new plan. And I believe that plan would stop this effort to create a two-state solution out of that. I mean, they don't want a two-state solution. The Palestinian leadership they don't want two states. They want Israel eliminated. And I think it's very important that we take them at their word and make the necessary adjustments.
Do you get any feedback from your colleagues in the military about this?
I think most military people recognize the importance of a strong Israel militarily. Just for the nefarious efforts of the neighbors there, they recognize that. And Al-Qaeda is embedded in that region. There's no question about that. Iran, with its nuclear capability, they now tell us that they have, is a serious threat. And through Syria and through Hamas and onto Hezbollah and the various other Palestinian jihadist groups that are there, they're a serious threat. And I think Israel has the military capability to deal with it, but they may have to do that if they determine their survival is at stake. They will have to do that regardless of what the United States says.
And what if the U.S. media widely condemns, UN condemns, and not just Israel, but then doesn't that get projected on Jewish people
in general? I mean, Jewish people all throughout the world. Let's face it, anti-Semitism is rising to pre-World War II levels in Europe today. It's all we had to do is to look at these anti-Israel rallies in the United States during this Gaza conflict. I mean, when that happens, when that kind of thing happens, the anti-Semites come out of the closet. And I think we have to be aware of that. But that can't be the determining factor with regard to Israel's response to its enemies. I mean, we need a prime minister there, like Ben Gurion, like Begin, that told the United States, we want your respect and we want your support, but we have to survive, and we're going to make the decisions that are necessary for our survival.
You think Biden remembers Begin embarrassing him that way?
He probably does, but that's all right,
He bears a grudge? He might bear a grudge?
He might. I don't know. He'd have to speak to that. But that's the past, and I don't think they can, make policy based upon the past. They've got to make policy based upon the facts on the ground, the realistic facts on the ground today. And I think most military people recognize that.